Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast, all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is David Tenneson. David is a computer guy who lives in Alabama, who I ran across on his Twitter account, College Golf Book. He's basically creating a database for the history of college golf, which speaks right to my heart. Any of you who have listened to my podcast for a while know how much I appreciate the history of the game of golf, and specifically college golf. And David is doing a lot of research as we speak. So today he and I talk a lot about how his love for this project came about, what he's been doing over the last 5 or 6 years to find out history, the artifacts that he's collected, and 2 very mysterious trophies that have disappeared. David does a really good job writing about this on his blog, and he also does a great job of research. But really good guy, and I think you'll enjoy it, especially the history of college golf. Okay, all you loyal Better Than I Found It listeners, please join me in welcoming David Tenneson to the podcast today. David, thanks for being here on Better Than I Found It.
Thanks so much, Coach. I really appreciate you having me on. I've listened to every single one of these, and to actually be on one is a dream come true, so thank you.
Well, a lot of people don't know who David Tenneson is. I didn't until I started following you on Twitter. I don't have any other social media anymore. I haven't for a few years. But I've been following you there, your Twitter handle or X handle, College Golf Book, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm a true golf historian. I love the history of the game. I certainly love the history of college golf and know a lot about it. I've lived a lot of it the last 30 years, but I've studied a lot of it before then, and I find it very intriguing what you're doing with this, and we're going to talk about that. But a lot of people that follow college golf on a casual basis probably have no idea who you are. But some people that follow a little closer know that you do a lot of research. And let me read your mission on your X handle. It says, we are on a mission to create the ultimate college golf database, including tournament data, forgotten artifacts, and personal recollections. I have followed. All right. Yeah. Okay. So that is what your mission is.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing with that mission?
I feel like I've spent a lot of time working towards that mission and haven't gotten nearly as far as I'd like, and yet have uncovered so many things that I never even thought of. So it's both going really well, and we're still somehow in the early stages of it.
Well, how in the world what's the genesis of this? How did it come about to begin with? I don't even remember how I stumbled across yours, other than maybe you followed me. I don't remember.
Yes, sir. Yeah, probably one of those times where I just blindly reached out. I've done that with several coaches, with different people, but really, I don't have a strong background in college golf. I played golf in high school. Let's just say Coach Siwa was not coming out to see any of my tournaments, so was not being recruited, but did go to the University of Alabama to study history and political science. And fast forward several years, I'm working in software, which is what I do. And I'm following along with my Crimson Tide in the 2017-2018 season. The men's and women's teams were doing really well, made it all the way to the finals in Stillwater. And after that championship, just really wanted to dive into some more of the history, because, during the telecast, they cover all kinds of very interesting things. And being interested in history, I started digging and looking for books and newspaper articles, anything that I could find. And really, that's where I ran into the fact that there's just not a whole lot out there that's very easy to get your hands on. So read what I could, started putting together some information really just for me. And that turned into 5 pages, 10 pages. And now I have hundreds of pages of different notes and different things as I fall down different rabbit holes. And sometimes that turns into a post that I put online. Sometimes it's different things that I put out on Twitter. But really, it's just a hobby that I've kind of fallen headfirst into and has really turned into a passion for me.
I really love your passion because I'm a historian, as I mentioned earlier, and those that know me closely understand that and have this kind of freakish memory for college, or not just for college golf, but just in general, the history of major championships, that thing. But what I was going to tell you, you said there's not a lot out there. There really isn't. So college golf hasn't been covered in book form well at all. Um, Ben Thompson, who coached Yale to several multiple national championships when the NCAA championship was more of just an Ivy League. He was at Yale and he wrote a book in 1939 called How to Play Golf. Basically, was just uh, a book that was sort of a how to swing the golf club book, if you will. And maybe the last couple of pages of that book had a little bit about team golf. That was it, nothing. So it really
Right.
wasn't a college golf book. In 1962, Dave Williams at the University of Houston put out a book called How to Coach and Play Championship Golf. And you said you've got copies of all of these, which is
Yes,
great.
sir.
Um, but that book went more into how he raised money, how he promoted the All-American, which is still the greatest college golf tournament of all times, how he coached, a little bit about how to play, but really he wasn't a golfer himself, so that was kind of hard for him to say. But actually would have helped a young novice coach. Don't you think that book could have helped a coach?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of good information in there for coaching. And just as a byproduct of that, the history kind of seeped in and he couldn't help it because he was making it.
Oh my gosh. In fact, he was right in the middle of a career that spanned 30 years, 16 national championships, and that 1962 was right in the heart of it. So it was obvious he was the first great college golf coach if you think about the modern day of college golf. Another book by Sam Puryear. Sam was the coach at Michigan State. He is now at Howard University, a book called Diamonds in the Rough that he wrote.
Big book.
Not about college golf, but it was a college golf coach writing a book.
Yeah.
And then Neil Hayes and Brian Murphy in 2010. Do you have a copy of The Last Putt?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, The Last Putt literally chronicles one of the most interesting college golf seasons of all times. From the U.S. Amateur, where Trip Keeney from Oklahoma State played Tiger Woods in the final, all the way through to the national championship, where Stanford and Oklahoma State played in the first playoff in history. The book is very well done. I loved it. I thought the chapter on Mike Holder was spot on. Uh, I didn't know Wally Goodwin, but I've talked to some other guys that said it was good. Obviously, some great chapters on Nota Begay and Casey Martin, and then Alan Bratton and Chris Tidlin. Anyway, very well done. Historically speaking, it basically covers just that year, but really well done. And then finally, the book that I wrote called Better Than I Found It, which you have, I don't know if you saw my book first or you just found me online or whatever, but anyway, that book was sort of some history in there for sure, but again, my history in college golf. But there hasn't been a lot. You've had to dig deep to find what you found. Tell me. So there's that history, and I want to get to a trip that I orchestrated for you to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma. I want to talk about that. But how in the world did you start? Was it just online searches?
It was a lot of online searches. I mean, naturally, the place you're going to go to is the team you're interested in. So, go to their website, and you've got a lot of good information. Um, Tends to connect you to other websites, other teams, and go through that. And then I did find the book you mentioned, The Last Putt, and like you said, that's just an incredible read. It's very well laid out as a narrative. It gives you information for how Karsten Creek was built, just going through that incredible season, and the hook being it was Tiger Woods' freshman year. But it gets into the history of the Oklahoma State program. You've got so much stuff that happens within that book that's captured that it just makes you want more. And then that's where I found your book, and I have to say it's one of those books that, and this is going to sound cheesy and I apologize, but it did change my life. Even though I don't do anything with college golf in terms of coaching, in terms of playing, anything like that, but the applications for that is so far beyond golf that it really just struck a chord with me. And then, of course, the actual golf history that you get into, a lot through your perspective, but you do cover out beyond that as well. So all of that is really it, like you said. I mean, there just wasn't a whole lot. So I ended up spending a lot of time going through, there are more and more databases online every year for different universities. Some of them you can access for free. Some of them you have to end up paying a little bit of money or you have to know somebody to be able to get access to. But started digging through a lot of those, ended up finding different bits of research through the Internet Archive. So going and finding old versions of websites, and then just really anything that I can cajole anybody into sharing with me. I'm trying to really kind of capture it all. And because I'm something of a digital pack rat, I had to find a way to be able to capture that, organize it, and put all that within context of different things. So all of that plus going through newspaper archives has been really a nightly venture for me.
Wow, I'm not a digital packer. I mean, I'm not that guy. I'm more of a, but I do love research and I do love, so if maybe in retirement one day I'll do a little bit more of this. I plan on writing another book. Um,
Good.
I'm definitely going to do that for sure in retirement. But it was inspiring to me that, and you seemed a little hesitant to ask any favors or hesitant to, could you do this? I don't want to put you out, Coach McGraw, or whatever. But since I'm such a great lover of the history of the sport, every time you'd come up with something, I'd say, well, I want to help this guy. I don't know him. In fact, today's the first time I've seen you. We've just been doing text messages and phone calls. But I told you one day, I said, if you haven't made a trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma, you need to do that. And you go, oh gosh, I don't know. I just don't know if I could do that. And you were going to be working in Oklahoma, and I orchestrated it where Mike Holder, and Mike did call me and he says, hey, who is this David Tenneson? Do I need to help him? I said, well, Mike, I think it would be great. I think he could, he's wanting to do a history of college golf. Nobody else has done it, and he would love to just come and see the place. Talk to me about that day with Mike Holder at Karsten Creek.
I don't know that I have the right words to describe that kind of experience. As you mentioned, it's something where I really try not to pressure anybody into talking with me or going through with anything because I know I'm just a random guy from Alabama who's asking questions. Some people are excited by that, some people aren't, and that's perfectly fine. But as you said, we had several conversations, and every time we do, I get really excited because we end up falling down some historical rabbit hole of some kind. But work did take me out to Oklahoma, and it just so happened to work out where I was able to go up to Karsten, not Karsten Creek anymore, Karsten,
Hmm.
and be able to see the place. It was one of those situations where I actually got to go two separate times on that trip, once as I got there, once as I was leaving. And whenever I got there, I was able to spend a couple of hours just going through the clubhouse. And I took a picture of every single trophy, plaque, wall art, decoration, every single thing that I could find in there. I have to be the only person in history who has gone to a golf course with the excitement and sole purpose of just stepping in the clubhouse and staying there all day. It was really an incredible couple of hours, and I could not have asked for anything more. And then somehow, on top of that, conversing with you and sending some emails with Coach Holder, it turned into, well, if if you want, you can come join me for my morning walk around the course. And again, I don't have the words to describe that. That was just incredible. We spent time, we walked down every fairway. He gave me all kinds of information on the things that he had done, things that I knew from the last putt book, things that I obviously didn't know. And it was just a great time being able to talk with him and pick his brain. And he he was very kind to put up with me for that amount of time. And then I'll give you just a real quick funny story along with that. So um, we spent that time and came back to the clubhouse, and I was able to sit down and look through his journals, which you had mentioned several times, and really one of the great treasure troves of college golf. I mean, everything in that building is, but these journals are just amazing, and they go back so many decades back into the 70s and 80s, 90s, just covering all the information. And so my phone is not a very new phone. The battery doesn't last very long on it, and I was taking pictures of everything that I possibly could. And my phone died right before I left the building. That was basically what kicked me out of the building. And I have got to get on a plane, and I need my phone to be able to get on the plane to get through TSA and everything. And so I had to run to Walmart to be able to buy a charger that would power my induction charger because of course the charging port doesn't work on this phone. So that's the only way that I can charge this phone is the hour-long drive back to the airport. And I had just enough juice to be able to have it on to get through security and be able to get on the plane. But yeah, it was such an incredible experience, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I can't thank you enough for helping to orchestrate that.
Absolutely. I was Mike Holder put me in charge of the original hallway design, locker room design, or whatever, and it's way better now than what we did when we initially opened the clubhouse. But I just remember thinking to myself, this needs to be good. And you'll notice that hallway was pretty wide. Mike wanted it to be wide for a reason, so there'd be room to expand, room to and there's room to expand down the hallway toward the golf shop too.
Yeah.
Um, plenty of more room for years and years to come. But I'm glad you got to have make that trip. I'm glad you were able to spend some time with Coach Holder. He is an icon. He's one of a
Yeah.
kind. There's only one Mike Holder. But I'm going to give you a title right now, the unofficial historian of college golf. Now, you're not there yet because I haven't seen anything completed. You're just kind of,
Fair
it's
enough.
all a work in progress, but you do have, I don't know anybody that's got the passion and the energy to want to create a database that's so deep. And so, and I think 50 years from now, people look back and be glad you did the work for sure. In within that, you've found some artifacts through the years. Talk about some of the treasures you found that are actual college golf artifacts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this effort is really trying to create an archive of the sport because that's something that it seems like a lot of the focus tends to be on as far back as we have current players who are making headlines. So, of course, Tiger Woods is always going to have a headline, and so that gets you back into the mid 90s, and then every now and then you'll get some information about Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, and that'll get you back into the 70s and 60s, and really what I'm trying to do with this is to not only capture what did happen, the history of it, but as a museum to be able to put that onto different tangible things. And so every now and then you'll see things come up on eBay or the different auction sites. And I have a modest budget for this, especially since it's not generating any
Mhm.
revenue. But I have been able to procure some amazing things, and when I do, I try to write a little bit about that to kind of share why I was so excited by it. So, a couple of things that I have include a 1959 patch from that championship that was in Oregon. And the significance of that being that that was the last year that you're doing the 6 count for versus the
Mhm.
5 count for. And Dave Williams was actually the big orchestrator of that changeover. And so, that's a pivotal moment in time for college golf. You've also got I've got a 1984 scorecard that kind of gets through the history of that was the first of the last two championships that Coach Dave Williams had there at Houston. So Steve Elkington, it's actually his scorecard from the final round. So I've got a couple of other pieces here behind me, but one of the things that I've been able to pick up here recently are the money clips
Mhm.
from some of the championships. And you've been gracious enough to share pictures of yours with me. And really, as a part of doing this, I'm trying to capture these items in a way that eventually can be on a website. Somebody can go through and click through and be able to see all of these things from whatever it may be, whether it's a championship, whether it's a random tournament that happened in February of 1972. the whole idea is that you could get yourself just kind of lost in whatever it is that you're interested in within the realm of college golf. And
Wow.
nothing like that seems to exist right now. And like you said, I've got a lot of passion for this. So it's just something I'm kind of plugging away at.
Yeah, for sure. We ought to connect you with the people of the Golf Coaches Association down in Norman, Oklahoma. They do have the Hall of Fame, the GCA Hall of Fame. Maybe you can work with them on something like that. But definitely, what you're going to create is a historical database of college golf, and people should know that it's more than just this year.
Yeah.
It's the college golf goes, there's a lot of great history in there, but part of that history is something that I remember very well. Two trophies, the team traveling trophy and the individual bowl trophy. And I know on your Twitter handle you've got a picture of Jack Nicklaus holding the individual trophy. And then obviously the team trophy had been taken with team pictures all through the years. The last time I ever saw the picture of both of them together was the summer of 1987. Oklahoma State had just won the team title at Ohio State, and Brian Watts had won the individual title. And so both trophies were there in Stillwater, and Mike Holder and Laban Harris Sr. took photo of with all their conference and national championship trophies and everything. And those two trophies are there. I never saw the trophies after that. That's become a quest for you, like a
Yes, sir.
mission to come up with those two trophies, but no luck so far.
No luck so far. It's one of those things where I happened across it as a part of the research and thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And you keep seeing this travel trophy pop up, sometimes in pictures, sometimes there's a vague reference to them, but you have the history literally etched into the side of these trophies.
Mhm.
So starting in 1920, you've actually got the team trophy that was given out. That one is called the Maxwell Cup. So the Maxwell Cup was introduced after the 1920 championship that was at Nassau Country Club. And that was a gift from the president at the time. And that's where the name, the Maxwell, comes from, Howard Maxwell. So that trophy, the team started passing that amongst themselves. Each year, the new winner would receive it. They would get to put their name and the names of the counting scores that were on there. So you would get four names, and then later on, we'd end up getting five names as other teams would add in their non-counter as well. But I mean, we're talking about a trophy that has many, many decades of history. And so you would think something like that would be prominently displayed. Same thing with the individual trophy. That was introduced in 1940 after the NCAA had taken over ownership of the tournament and everything. You have the Chick Evans Bowl was
Mhm.
introduced at that time, and it's one of those big Paul Revere style trophies, just a big silver bowl. And same thing, the winners have their names etched into that. And that's something where when you do see the picture of Jack Nicklaus in college, it's always him holding this trophy after he won the championship. So something that significant that Jack Nicklaus, who is one of the absolute greats of the game, has held and put his name into, again, you would think that that would hold some significance. But after starting to ask around the NCAA, the USGA, the GCAA, everybody that I could think of, I get a lot of mixed versions of either, no, I'm not sure about that, or I don't have a clue what you're talking about, but that sounds interesting. So if you find something, let me know. And I've been fortunate enough to speak with several coaches now who might have remembered it, who might have come in contact with it at some point in time. But unfortunately, we're getting to the point where we're very far past when most people would have recalled seeing something like that. So it is something that I'm really hoping that maybe somebody who's listening to this today knows something about. The best case scenario is somebody emails and says, "Well, yeah, it's been in this trophy case collecting dust all these years. How did you not know that?" I would love to see it. I'd love to touch it. I'd very much love to take pictures of every single etching on those because it does incorporates so much history. And I'd written a post about this to be able to share it and try and use it as a way to introduce myself to other people in the project that I'm working on, because really it does, in a lot of ways, kind of embody what it is that I'm trying to do, which is trying to rediscover this lost history and kind of reintroduce it. And it's not from the perspective of I know more than you. It's the perspective of I'm discovering this. Somebody might be interested in this as well. Some people already know it, some people don't, but it just seems to be a great way to capture that history that goes back so far. And I would just love to be able to find it someday. That would be incredible.
Well, hopefully those two trophies rear their ugly head eventually. They'll just show up. I know they're out there. At least I don't know anybody would have thrown them away. But in
You'd hope not.
1988, UCLA won the title, and I've not seen any pictures of them holding that trophy, and I don't think you have either. But
No,
anyway,
sir.
somewhere those trophies exist. Let's hope they come out. But within this research that you've done, what are the three most interesting tidbits or facts you've come up with that you thought, man, that's interesting. I'm glad I know that.
So the first one is basically going to take us into the second one, but um, kind of going through everything early on, where you're going to start is at the beginning. And of course, the NCAA record book is where you begin as well. So looking through that and going back to the newspaper archives, and there was a golf magazine that was put out by the USGA at the time. They capture information on those first couple of championships, and I became very confused by the idea or the fact that I could not reconcile that the second and the third championship, the winning team and the winning player, was flipped in the record book as opposed to what I was reading. And I naturally thought it was something that I was reading wrong. So read through it several times and come to find out that going back to about 1910, 1915, somewhere in that time range is where it seems like, for whatever reason, the historical record got those two mixed up. So very first championship, 1897. The 1898, they held two championships because they were going to flip it from being held in October to instead being held in the spring. And they didn't want anybody to lose an entire year out of that. So they ended up holding two championships that year. And the reason why this is significant, and you would think, oh, let's just flip the names, it's not a big deal. It's significant because at the time they were playing for a trophy that had been purchased. It was about $250 when it was purchased. That comes out to be somewhere north of $15,000 today. So it was a very big deal and it was a very nice trophy. But the team who won that three times would take permanent ownership of it. That was a standard practice. So Yale won the very first two championships. And that third championship came down to a tie that they ended up having to break in the afternoon whenever the players were going out and doing qualifying for the individual part of the championship. So Harvard ended up winning that one. They would go on to win the next several. They would take permanent ownership of that trophy. And so having those two flipped kind of devalues what was happening at the time, because Harvard did win that third one in a tiebreaker situation, kind of like the 1995.
Mhm.
So it was a big deal. And I kept thinking, man, I've got to be wrong on this. I don't understand, but it predates the NCAA. It's kind
Hmm.
of wild.
And you said that led to the other factor. Did you already give me that fact?
It is. So the other fact is going to be that trophy that they were playing for, the Ardsley Cup. That was taken in by Harvard, and there is one mention of it in the Harvard archives, at least that's available online, in 1908. That was referencing the fact that they had so many trophies that some of them were being put away and weren't able to be as well taken care of, let's say. So this one particular article was lamenting that fact and specifically referenced this golf trophy because it was the very first one ever, and how it had been tarnished and just it had been forgotten in this back room. So that's 1908. So you'd think again that's going to be lost to time. You're not going to be able to find that. Fast forward to uh, just about 2 years ago now. I was able to have a conversation with a father of a Harvard student, and they did the research, they did the legwork. I really wasn't involved in this very much at all, but they actually found that trophy hidden in a random trophy case in Harvard, and it is pristine. It's
Mm.
perfectly preserved, and they ended up bringing that out. They understood the significance of it after it being kind of put back as decoration. And I believe that that's going to get some place of prominence in Harvard, but that's one that I would really like to see in person as well. It's amazing that it was so well taken care of, and unfortunately, the person who would have done that taken care of passed away during 2020. So we unfortunately have lost the historical record of how it was maybe refound, taken care of, things like that. But the fact that the very first championship trophy exists and it's in pristine condition is
Wow,
just wild.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you've come up with some interesting facts, and I know you'll have more. What are the three greatest college golf records that will never be broken? Now, I'm going to throw a couple of mine in there after you, if you're not, if you don't have the same ones.
Okay. So thinking about this a little bit, there's just so many ways you can go with it. Men's, women's, D1 through D3. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. The first one that I came up with was Keith Fergus for Houston with 19 individual wins, and Amy Anderson of North Dakota State with 20 individual wins on the women's side. Those are just incredible stats. I
Wait,
don't
wait.
know the
Keith Fergus won 19 events at Houston.
19, and it's incredible. I don't know how anybody would get anywhere close to that total again.
I think if Tiger had played 4 years, he might have gotten there.
He probably would have.
But he didn't play 4 years, and I remember Lindy Miller at Oklahoma State had 11, and we just thought that was so amazing.
It
Uh,
is.
that I mean, anyway, gosh, 19.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Okay, that's those are good stats. What else?
Okay. So I've got another one that I would actually like you to maybe speak on a little bit if you don't mind. But you've spoken about it on this podcast before, but the 2014 championship. You were walking in what has to be one of the most historic matches in terms of scoring that anybody's ever seen. And in fact, the USGA, I believe, has reached out to you and gotten some information on this one. But tell us about the Robbie Shelton versus Zach Olson championship match.
Well, the USGA has reached out to Jay Sewell, and they told him
Okay.
it was actually 22 threes, I believe, and they'd never seen a scorecard in a match with 22 threes. It's never happened before. I watched every one of them, and it was funny walking with Robbie. I walked with him all three match play rounds. He was two down through five in all three matches. So he was playing from behind every single time. And Zach Olson was one of my last recruits to get to Oklahoma State. I never got to coach him. He, Brendan Jelly, and Stratton Nolan were the three in the 2013 class I didn't get to coach. So here we are at the national championship. I'm walking with Robbie Shelton, who's a freshman, the number one freshman in the country. And he's playing Zach Olson, a kid that I desperately wanted to get to Stillwater. And they played the most amazing match. And I just look back on it and just birdie after birdie after birdie, and you just never stop making birdies. And I don't think you'll see a match, one 18-hole match with 22 threes. I don't think you'll ever see it again. You might. That's a pretty rough stat to beat right there. That's pretty amazing.
That was incredible, and I encourage anybody who hasn't listened to it or hasn't listened to it in a while to go back and listen to the podcast that you did with Coach Sewell, because going through that and the dichotomy between you and him at the conclusion of that championship is amazing, especially for an Alabama fan like myself.
Yeah. Well, Coach Sewell tends to get a little more excited than I do, and in fact, he absolutely loves the fact that I was my total relaxed, easy, not, and he was jumping into Trey Mullinix's arms when Trey made the putt on 17.
Iconic, yes.
But anyway, that was a great match between Zach and Robbie for sure.
That was awesome. Well, the third one that I have here, I obviously a lot of attention paid to Winnie Ding going through and shooting his 27 under 189 at the 2024 Amer Ari. But I don't think that maybe enough appreciation is given to just how incredible that score is. You can go through and say what you want to about anything when it comes to being able to score really well on a given course, on given conditions or whatever. It doesn't matter. To do that over 3 rounds is absolutely incredible. And before that, we hadn't seen anybody really get super close to that 190 mark. That seemed like it was the 4 minute mile, the just absolute benchmark that you're just not going to break. And he did. And since then, we've seen one other 190 come up, which is incredible too. But to kind of add on to that was the fact that that was his second tournament playing for Arizona State. The first tournament that he played in was a week or so prior at the NIT. And at that tournament, he finished runner-up. He shot 17 under 199. So the combination of those two scores, 199 followed by a 189, and a total of 44 under, has to be the best two first tournaments for a collegiate player ever. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I don't think anybody could argue that one. That's for sure. Scoring records though are vulnerable.
They
They are.
are. You're right.
And I think we're the 58 that Jim Furyk shot is going to be beaten. Somebody's going to shoot 57. It's going to happen. They are vulnerable, and I've got one scoring record, then another one is a longevity record, if you will. But I think Charles Howell winning by 8, shooting 23 under par for 72 holes. Whew, that's a pretty good scoring record right there. I don't know.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. But Oklahoma State making 65 national championships in a row. I don't think anybody's ever. Now I realize regional play didn't start until 1989. Before that, they just invited the top 30 teams in the country, but they literally did go to every national championship from 1947 to 2011. So
Yeah.
65 years, that's I don't know how many teams are ever going to go to the national championship in any sport 65 straight years. It's kind of hard to, first of all, you have to live that long to be able to see that record go. But I don't know. Charles Howe's 23 under, pretty stout for 4 rounds at a national championship. And now they've gone to La Costa. If that ends up being the permanent site, that golf course is too hard to shoot 23 under par.
Yeah.
Just not going to happen. So, but
Yeah. Those are,
anyways, there's a lot of different records that you could say maybe this will never be done, that'll never be done. But Houston 16 national championships. Whew, that might be a rough one. State is now 12, so I
yep.
think they can do it, but that's pretty amazing. Um, so I did want to ask another question. You've done some research on coaching trees. I'm a part of at least one of those coaching trees you've done research on, but talk to me about how you go about doing that because that takes a lot of work. Uh, that's not an easy thing to do. Coaching trees in major college football, that's one thing. Coaching tree for college golf got to be a little more difficult to come up with.
It is, and it's one of those things that I fell into by accident. It was a rabbit hole that I fell down listening to your episode where you were talking with Coach Brogdon, and that stepped into the conversation talking about Coach Haddock when he briefly left Wake Forest for about 18 months and then came back. And it turns out that that decision to both leave and to return had quite a significant ripple effect within the coaching space. Some positions opened up. You get some different peoples who were able to come in and get coaching opportunities. Buddy Alexander got his start with coaching out of that as a byproduct of that. So that kind of led into, well, maybe we can kind of see where those ripples happened elsewhere with other decisions to move. And that led me into trying to go through and chart as many different coaching moves as I could. And it very quickly became evident that not only is that a just gigantic project, but it's one that if you're going to do, you have to do it the correct way. So, trying to go through and, I mean, even semester by semester, capture where any given coach is within their career, um, what level of coaching they're at, whether it's a head coach, it's an assistant coach, it's a graduate assistant, just somebody who is considered a coach as a part of the team, and then kind of charting that out and where they went. And you can then utilize that to be able to create these coaching trees. So you mentioned the coaching tree that you're on with Mike Holder. That was the first post that I did kind of covering that. He didn't have very many assistants, but of course, all of you have very much spread out his tree in a bunch of different ways and have been very successful. And so it's a very interesting tree to be able to see because it ends up touching so many championships, so many different historic moments and things. And then you have also on this podcast talked about the New Mexico coaching tree and Coach Dwayne Knight. Digging into his tree is just an incredible experience, and that was one that I had a whole lot of fun getting to research and do some writing on. I wrote 6,000 words on that, and that wasn't anywhere close to enough
Well,
to
I'm
put.
now part of that tree because Ryan Murphy is my assistant coach.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I'm actually in that tree somehow.
You
It's
are.
crazy.
It's great. Yeah, there are a lot of really big name coaches that people wouldn't necessarily expect to come into that because of the way the assistants will kind of move around a little bit before getting their own head coaching spot and then being able to create their own branching tree. So it's an expansive project. It's one that I recently decided to put out something publicly to try and see if I could get coaches to maybe self-report some of that information to make it a little bit easier to do. And I've been blown away by the number of coaches that have responded. And I really am looking for men's, women's, D1, 2, 3, everything. I think it would be a very important thing to do, just from the perspective of being able to capture all of the history, because again, the coach is such an important element of not only what happens with the team and championships or not or whatever, but the ideas that flow through an individual and then how that gets distilled by somebody else who goes on to find their own coaching success or maybe steps out of coaching entirely, but in the brief amount of time that they were coaching, maybe they did the same thing, they touched somebody else, and that ends up carrying an idea from one coach through several generations down to another. And I think that this project that you're doing with your podcast, with your book, I think that in a lot of ways that has really highlighted the importance of that because we hear so many different stories, tellings, but it comes back to somebody somewhere has made an emphasis and impact on that coach or that player. And you just never know where that's going to end up going into somebody else completely down the line from someplace you didn't expect. So, anyways, it's a very expansive project. It's one that I hope to continue doing, and I really appreciate the coaches who have utilized the link that I put out. It's pinned in my Twitter X right now, but any coach who's interested in maybe providing a little bit of information about their coaching history and anything else, there's a link you can click and be able to go through and answer some questions that you want to. And then at the end, if you're okay with me following up, then that'd be great. Again, I'm trying to really not put myself into anything. I understand the time commitment that you guys already have is just incredible, and I don't want to step into that. But where I can kind of fit in, I would love to be able to capture the history and really put together this tapestry that you guys are weaving.
Well, it's a pretty amazing project, and I'm pretty excited about it. Just following from far off here, but y- tell me, are you ever really going to put this in a book form, or do you think it'll just eventually just be a massive database on a website?
I'd love to do both. I think that the database effort really helps to focus in on a book effort, and I'd really like to do that. And my Twitter handle, College Golf Book, that was really started because I couldn't think of anything else that kind of captured what it is that I was trying to do. And a book was originally what I was aiming for. And of course, in order to write a book that purports to be, the history of something, you've got to have context, you've got to have that background information. And so that's where I kind of got stuck was the background information and capturing as much as I can. And, tournament results, of course, are a big part of that, but the stories that come in and out of those results themselves, I think are just as, if not more important. And so that's where I'm trying to collect as much as I can and then turn around and focus that in. I'd love to get any number of books, one, two, three, I don't know. But yes,
Did,
that
did
is
you
one.
see last week when I had Bruce Hepler on,
Oh, yes.
and Bruce talked about when he tried to hire me?
Yes.
I've never been public about that because we were literally just at that tournament and I was frustrated because I knew I couldn't even recruit anymore that week and I couldn't get a flight home. So I was just walking aimlessly around the golf course and he said, "Well, I need to hire you." And I went back to Stillwater thinking, okay, Bruce wants to hire me. And then Mike Holder became the athletic director and hired me immediately. And I had no idea he was going to do that. I knew I'd run my course in women's college golf. But the reason I bring up that point is I know you've been able to pick out some tidbits in my podcast when coaches will say something and you're going, oh, I got that. That's adding to my deal. So
Absolutely.
hopefully I can keep getting coaches on there that'll do that type of thing.
Yeah, and you're dancing around the fact that I have texted you on several occasions and said as much. Said, Coach, it felt like that particular segment, that tidbit that you just threw out there was maybe just for me. It's a very selfish perspective, I know, but it does feel that way at times because you make it a point to get into the history of stuff, and I really your podcast has been just such a treasure trove, and the stories that come out that naturally just kind of flow through the conversations that you have really are invaluable, and that's really a big part of what I'm trying to capture because you ask somebody about a particular tournament or something, you're going to get a certain amount of information, but if you get to talking about their career or tell me about that time that you were struggling here and then you ended up putting something together and that had an effect over here. And that's the type of thing that I'm trying to weave together. That context is so crucial, I think, beyond just what happened at any given tournament, what the
Yeah.
scores were.
Well, I appreciate you joining me today, David. It's been really good to kind of get your perspective on this, and um, I know that I'm going to continue to follow the work you're doing, and I want my listeners who are interested in my podcast to know how they can access your information right now, whatever's available, whatever you've published. How do they get to that?
Yeah, so I do all of my writing on a website called Substack right now. So I have that available at 5count4. Those are the numbers 5count4 .substack.com. And when you go there, it might ask for your email. It's a newsletter setup. I have completely broken how you're supposed to use that. You're supposed to send out smaller things, and then it arrives by email. I end up sending a lot of larger things. But if you'd like to put in your email address, you can do that to be able to see every time a new post comes in. But you can skip that and be able to go straight to the content. There's information. I did a series on the men's championships. I did a series on the women's championships. Did some different series that we've kind of talked about today. So all of that's on 5count4.substack.com, and eventually 5count4.com is going to have all of that, plus a lot of the stats work and different things that I've been working on. And I have to say, just real fast, Mikkel, your assistant,
Mhm.
has been amazing speaking with. We've collaborated on a number of things. His website is one that you've mentioned before, but absolutely something that folks should go check out because every now and then we'll be able to do some collaborating there and put out some more statistical rather than historical work, and that's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah, Mikkel, brilliant statistician. The guy
Oh,
knows how
yes.
to take statistics and analyze them and put them in a workable form. It's pretty amazing. So I know you've been working with him. I'm glad you're doing that. But David, I really appreciate you just joining me today for about 45 minutes to an hour just to talk about this project you're in, this passion you have, and I want you to keep it going. And if there's everything I can do, you need to get to Waco, though. I do have about 30 years of journals that you need to see because they've got some more information that Coach Holder's journals ended 25 years ago, or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I would love to get to this, Coach. And again, I really appreciate you having me on today. This has been such a treat, and what you're doing is just so special. Even beyond just the world of college golf, the reach is incredible. So thank you so much for what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, David. I appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. You too.